Welcome to Season 2 of the Retail Tea Break. My name is Melissa Moore, founder of The Retail Advisor. As a consultant, mentor, trainer and lecturer, I enable retailers and makers to reach their potential through sales growth and excellence in customer experience. I'm also your host of the Retail Tea Break. Each week, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and makers to decode the myths, share stories, and their insights into this industry of ours. So if you enjoy listening to the Retail Tea Break, subscribe to the podcast and share it with others in the industry too. So sit back, grab that cup of tea and listen in. Welcome to the Retail Tea Break. So today I'm joined by an expert maker who took his personal interest in alternative remedies, studied to be a kinesiologist, and went on to create and develop a premium quality product, becoming the first company in Ireland to distill oil from natural native sources. I am so excited today to be joined by Karl Murray from Kotanical. Karl, how are you today?
Great, bit dull out there, but I'm good. How are you?
Oh, Karl, you're so good to come on board. I'm a huge fan of the brand, so I probably have to admit that straight up. So, what I really wanted to talk to you today was about your journey. You know, so many more makers now are wanting to get out there, to get their brands in front of people and retailers and sell abroad. And you're on this journey now. So, before we have a chat about your journey with Kotanical, in the time it takes to boil a kettle, which is about 2 minutes. Tell us a bit about you and the business.
So I'm Karl. I found Kotanical. I'm from North Dublin, Dublin 5, so born and reared here. So I was always into health and fitness and into martial arts. And during the recession, I was in building, but we were getting more into looking after ourselves. So to speed it up, we were like not much work in building, so you were just taking more time to care for yourself. And it went from that to studying on the weekends kinesiology. And then I was introduced to essential oil through in the RDS over 10 years ago now, you know. Yeah, so I was walking along and I was called over to a little boot, and it was like someone introduced oil to me because I had a sore wrist. And then it was like, oh, they use oil in toy boxing because we did martial arts as well. So I was introduced to oil, and then I found out there's differences in quality because it's an afterthought oil. Well, it used to be, not so much now. So I start getting real interested, start researching, and getting essential oil in, start doing little stalls myself. Like I'd be at the front line, I done the RDS before about 7 years ago, so I'm long time at it. And then I realized no one was making oil in Ireland, and every Irish skincare product and a few of the Irish brands who have oil, if it's want to call it that, I wouldn't call it that now, but it's fit for a candle. And I was like, right, I'm gonna start trying to make the oil. So I was like, it's the Wild West. Like you don't actually, like it's mad. It's like making alcohol or whiskey or moonshine. It's very similar to that. So I was reading books from like 100 years ago in Australia. They used to do tea tree, and I was reading their methods. Just when when you're sitting there googling all the time. So that's what I was doing.
Oh,
So I was like, right, I bought the equipment in, and it was all copper stuff that you could make moonshine with. And then I was practicing with different herbs. We didn't get anywhere. Then we eventually grew our own peppermint. It took me in between, spent 2 days potting peppermint for the next year. And then I was making frankincense in between as well. And then I was testing different crops. And then all that was great, but then I had to come up with a brand name. So I had to get a mentor. And then Aoife was great. She said, everything you're doing is great, but the branding's shy. So we came up with Kotanical. Everyone thinks it's Carl and Botanics. It's not. It's Craft and Botanics. And so that's kind of the summary of the story. And now we're sitting here.
wow, that's unreal. And I think what I take from that is it sounds like you kind of fell into it, but you enjoyed it. But also, you've really grafted, Carl. And I think this is why I was so interested in bringing you onto the Retail Tea Break today, because you said you almost fell into this 10 years ago. So 10, 12 years ago, the recession, when we know was the last time that everything took a dip. We're obviously now coming out or coming around from the pandemic.
there's definitely been an upsurge I've seen of people deciding to leave their jobs, or they've had to leave their jobs because the job's no longer there anymore. And they're going, well, I've got a bit of a hobby on the side. Sure, I'll give it a crack. I'll give it a go. But what I'm already hearing from you is, yeah, that's great. And I see the smile on your face, but it is hard work. It takes time and it is hard work. So, what were those few first years like for Kotanical?
They were good for meeting people, but they were bad, not great for business. The first 2 years, there was a lot of hiccups, a lot of trial and error. There was like trying to find your feet in the market, how to market yourself, what avenues, then people dropping the ball, stuff like that. Anything that could have went wrong really did, I'd say. Like getting labels done, the labels were done wrong, or just getting oil in and stuff getting lost. So we had like a lot of kind of weird luck for the first 2 years, because in the entrepreneur scene in Ireland, especially back then, they were all for tech. And
Yes.
now all the tech companies that were saying my categories in business awards are all folded and liquidated, and so the big last
Oh.
man standing. So there was a huge bias for tech when I started, and a guy doing essential oil wasn't thought of much, and wellness wasn't thought of much. They might make out it is now, but like it's probably
Certainly 10 years ago, it wasn't the done thing. It wasn't trendy back then. And I'd say, by the sounds of it, you stuck out like a sore thumb, but for the wrong reason. Like, it wasn't fashionable what you were doing back then.
No, it's definitely people would ask questions of you, be like, what are you at, your sexuality, like it's,
But they weren't taking you seriously by
no,
the sounds of things.
you wouldn't be took serious in it, but someone could come in, oh, we're going to do a new dating app, or we're going to do some stupid, I don't know, some Mickey Mouse thing, and they'd be like, here's 50 grand from the state, here's this, here's a few awards. But I felt it was like the X Factor then, because it was giving people a feeling of being successful, but they never were going to be. So, like, I was
And
happy with
it's interesting, as you say, those people that were winning the awards 10 years ago, some of them aren't in business now. Whereas
that.
there you are,
Fine.
having grafted stronger than ever.
Yeah, so a lot of my experience would have been over the last 5 years in the entrepreneur scene. So, 10 years ago would have been like the really like wild west of it, and then the brand came together 5 years, 5.5 years ago. But that was when it was peak tech in Ireland and peak startups, like it's just, I think it's people trying to get enough money to live on the beach for the summer or something. Like it was definitely some sort of Ponzi scheme to just to talk about, like
But there you are, and Casanical's still standing today. And in those early days, you talk about the branding in that respect. Were you just out there winging it on your own? Was there support? Were there people to go to? Was there advice? Or were you just winging it? Were you just going with what you thought looked right, sounded good, customer might want?
I'd say maybe adapting more so than winging it, because I'd always spend time learning. So once I got the branding right, it was like it was just learning on your own time with what little money you had. So technically, probably would be winging it a little,
But you
but
were very much self-taught then, by the sounds of it.
uh,
This wasn't about you being given loads of expertise help, or,
no,
having lots of
no.
online classes. You were learning by doing.
Yeah, like I never attended a workshop on how to start your own business. I think inherently, like some people, I wouldn't say are gifted, but you might have an inclination to be good at something if you work hard, But it was like I'd say that company gave me 2 years of to get pack it in, so probably say 730 reasons to fuck off, excuse the language, like maybe even a little bit more. And so especially because the product is essential oil, and then you need to get diffusers in. So there's big money in diffusers getting them in. People don't realize that there's a tremendous amount of tax paid in importing anything like that. So it's big gambles all the time with oil.
What was it like then? As you said, you had to find the investment in order to bring that stock in. What was that like initially, having to make that investment, but also source people that could fulfill that product order?
Oh, we went through a few companies and had to terminate ties. So you'd spend could spend 6 to 8 months testing a new diffuser, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, because like you don't know what you're really getting. Then you have to build up trust, and then if you go a sample order is probably one diffuser, but a wholesale order is anywhere between 1 to 5,000 diffusers. So the margin of error, like it's like it's crazy.
But again, I think this is something else people don't talk about. They think nowadays with Alibaba being this great big kind of umbrella company, you can go online, find a stockist in China, they'll send you a few samples, hey presto, you pay a bit of money, stock rolls in. Like it sounds really straightforward on paper, but the reality from what you're saying was anything but.
No, well, because you have to pay the tax coming in, and then if you're playing by the rules and you're VAT registered, you know, you have to put through the amount, the right amount of the stock, because they're gonna see that the forwarder and the freights will see that, and they'll be like, hold on, you owe 5,000 euro, like 23% of the order. So anyone who's like trying to source that now, for every 10,000 euro you're bringing in, it's 23% without the duties on it. So like that's it, because yeah, you get the stock, but like you have to sell 2,300 euros worth for every 10,000 just to get your money back on tax. That's what
And
the
that's
unit
just the
costs.
money back. That's not you
Yeah.
making money.
So it's a interesting one.
But again, this, I presume you were self-taught, you learned as you went. There was no one saying, Carl, today you need to do this, and Carl, today
Oh,
you need to
no,
do
no.
that.
No, it was kind of like you find out for yourself. Like I did get information off a friend of mine, Ray Shaw, who runs Body Force. He put me on to the right forwarder, but then I'd still have to deal with the account who made the diffusers, and then you'd still have to try and space out your current stock for the next rerun and not buying in too much. So supply chain management would come into that too. And then you have to manage expectations. If you took 10,000 in, could you sell 10,000 quick? And if you can't, then if any break outside of warranty, and yeah, so it's different. It's like a whale and a bunch of hamsters, and you don't know what one's jumping in is going to cause you issue. You know, if you're selling really well and then the stock is held up by 2 3 weeks, you could have a 2 3 week lull from just that. But if you're doing really bad, you might get hesitant in taking in the stock, but then you might have a bumper Christmas. So it's not for the faint-hearted, you know.
Definitely not by the sound of things, but
No.
also at the same time. So now you've got the first initial oils, you've bought these amazing diffusers in, you've paid the tax, yeah, physically have them. How did you then start to build out the range?
By my own kind of experience with oil and customer feedback, like we've very engaged following from time to time. It depends if they bomb organic now on digital, that's a big issue too. So yeah, people would email in ideas. Like we'd have some customers on their 15th order. We would. And we have
Wow. So you've a real loyal customer base. So I suppose it's easy to listen to that customer when they say, would you fancy doing X, Y, and Z? And was that then the way you went about building the range out?
yeah, people would, I don't like this, I want that, or what do you think of this, or can you make this blend for me? Or yeah, anything, like a multitude. Oh, and then just I chat to customers every other day. They ring, or the email. So you're constantly your brand never really sleeps, it's constantly taking in information.
I love that. I love that though. You're so connected with your brand, which again, I think makers or out there or people launching product brands have a weird perception that maybe the first year is a bit difficult. But by the sounds of it, you are years into this. You are still very much ear to the ground, working around the clock, but in a positive way to grow that brand and develop. And I suppose it brings me to the point then, you're really passionate from everything I've read about kind of now being able to grow and develop range here in Ireland. What was that like taking that first step to kind of start planting your own to be able to have the oils here?
Kind of at the time we weren't making any money, so it just was like may as well get out because we're nothing else is happening. You know, like it was like why not? Like because unfortunately most people need to understand when they're going to start a business. Like some people are waiting 5 years to be just making money
Yeah.
decent. So you will have to go above and beyond even when there's no results incoming. Like we're talking about peppermint plants that were planted 4 summers ago. You know,
So it's really a long-term investment in that respect.
yeah, it would be long term, and it'd also be like, you know, when you were doing it then that day, it was a lovely day, end of August, and you didn't really know, you know, like, because you're gonna have to wait. So it's just kind of like, it was great memories, but looking back, it was a lot like I didn't know how much more time was gonna pass until it was gonna be like popular either, you know.
And then, so from day one to where we are now, when did you finally realize actually this was a sustainable long-term business, that you knew it was starting to make money? What was that time period like?
Oh, it's day and night difference. Like it is like you kind of it's like you have a tail and it begins to wag for you, you know, like you're much happier. But then like everything, all good things come to an end. You'll hit a lull, you know, and then the pandemic, we hit that. And we were
What
doing
was that like for the business in that respect? Did it escalate things? Did more people buy? Because of course you have an amazing website, it's very accessible. Or were people just fearful? And did you see a lull before it picked up?
the start of the pandemic was great, but whatever the pandemic gave you, it took back later. So you massive
Oh,
supply chain issues. Then you had like delays in product. Then you had like the whole supply chain. Then you're even up to a few months ago, the pandemic with cardboard boxes.
yes.
So you'd have a spike and then it'd be great. But like we ran out of diffusers 2 months into the pandemic and we had to pay, our shipping costs went up tenfold.
Wow.
So yeah, what it gave you, it took in other ways. And I know people try to begrudge other businesses because they done well during the pandemic, but they don't realize the uncertainty working for yourself during the pandemic, you know, like it wiped out a generation of entrepreneurs, you know, like a lot of people have left the game I seen from the pandemic and they won't be coming back.
And was there ever a stage, I suppose, during that time, especially as you say, you ran out of your probably your bestseller?
Mm.
That can't have been easy to come back from, or to think, what on earth am I going to do next? How do we come back from this?
Yeah, I just had to get the stock in and manage expectations. That's really it. It was kind of like do or die because like no one knew what was happening next, so you just knew you had to get your stock in, you know. So we had to do pre-orders, pre-sales, and then when all the diffusers arrived, we had to rebox them all because they destroyed all the boxes by handballing them into the fan.
Oh, wow. Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness. And this is again, it's things that people don't think of.
yeah, yeah.
It's these small little things that I'd say were ridiculously time consuming, but also cost you so much more money having to do.
Definitely. So, like, of course, because I had to do a lot of it myself then, because you couldn't work next to people, you know, because this is the
Oh,
time where they were coming out with mad information. Like, it was literally like, don't go out if it's windy, you might catch COVID. Like, it was, you know, it's very peak hysteria, you know, and then, yeah, it was a good time and it was a frustrating time as well. But then I think since last April, I just think it's gotten the way more than it's helped, you know? Like people are like,
that's
all the brands taken off because of the pandemic. Like I can tell you now, like what brands benefited also got massive problems then too from it, you know?
and I genuinely respect your honesty there, because this is the side we're not hearing, especially from brands or from retailers. It seemed to be very black and white. Some places closed or brands went out of business, and that was that. But actually, what you're saying is, hang on, it was good for a time, but the heartache and the frustration and the issues that it then caused were just as bad.
Yeah, they would have been because then cash flow, because you're like you have to
Right.
stretch your cash flow further. And then the worst thing that ever happened last year. Apple released the iOS update that destroyed Facebook marketing, which Facebook marketing is the most beneficial thing for small businesses ever invented, you know, and that was destroyed last year because of Apple going to war with them.
Did you see an immediate effect for your business, for your customers when that happened?
Big time. You can't actually connect with your customers because there's no more organic reach. So it's kind of, to be honest, I'd call it a serial killer of businesses, because there people
Wow.
aren't noticing it yet, but it's probably the worst thing ever that's happened. And I know a few people have realized it, and you start seeing people kind of not knowing how the brand can't find their voice anymore. Like when we got into Facebook marketing, we were able to connect with so many people and help so many people with our product offering. But now you can't. You have to be just kind of hitting hope almost with your targeting, you
That's
know?
really dangerous because it sounds like you had a good customer base. You knew exactly what you were doing from a marketing perspective. You had the stock. Like it sounds like everything was going really well.
Yeah,
And now more and more the last year, things have been pulled away from you. They've been taken away, and you're, I wouldn't say struggling, but you're certainly having to fight back in order to gain that reach again and that customer base.
yeah, like we were blessed we had so many customers and we have a huge repeat rate, but you can definitely see the cost going up for the results. Say if you got, I don't know, 10,000 euro a week and it costs you 2 or 3,000, now it probably costs 4 to 5, and
Wow.
anyone who isn't talking about it, they're probably not used to, nice consistent run, or they could be blagging. Like we still grew our business last year 20% year on year.
My
So, but
goodness.
I haven't had a sick day in 5 years, or I didn't take a holiday or
But you see,
nothing.
that's the reality. And again, this is what's not talked about out there is you are now like, and you are, by the sounds of it, 20% growth on the year before, very successful business. But my goodness, you've personally paid the price. The business has paid the price. I presume, even though you're making money on the surface, profit margins are much more squeezed than they have been in previous years. So it's not all rosy by the sounds of it.
No, it's not, because you have to invest in new channels and different collaborations and look at different. So like you can't be for profit as much as you would like to be. But then there's just more seasonality comes into play, and you just have to be really on the ball. Like if you're trying to get into a business now and you're planning on taking the summer off, like don't bother. To be constantly aware, and if not, someone want to be aware for you, because they brought out another update a week or two ago, and it's ruining email marketing now. So
Wow.
there's loads of stuff happening, and very few are oblivious to it. You know,
How are you then staying ahead? Or even if you don't feel you're staying ahead, how are you staying up to date with all this stuff happening?
I just read a lot and keep an eye, but unfortunately, you only can react. No one is getting ahead, and anyone who is making it up. Like you're not getting ahead because they're changing the goalposts all the time. You learn how to kick with your right foot, and they want you to kick with your left, kind of. So, like, even last year's expert in marketing be this year's fool in it, because it's just immense amount of time needed. But I can see a lot of brands having to work with influencers now, and that might be a problem because they could dictate the terms, and then the prices will go up, and it's not going to be a friendly ecosystem for Irish businesses, I don't think, in the foreseeable with all these trends.
How are you hoping, or what are you doing now, I suppose, to combat that? Or have you found a way around it that might work this week? But of course, as you say, next week or the week after, back to square one again.
I think because we're a bit longer, where people know who we are, who are into it, so we don't have that problem of the forced engagement, or like we don't like it's more if you're starting out now, I'd pity you. I'd be like, oh, I'd
Yeah.
probably wait and hopefully the market changes a little where people can see a business quicker again. Where with us, like, because we have such a big customer base and we have like 35 to 40% repeat purchases, like so. But see, we ship every day, same day. We're on standby every Monday to Friday, and we have everything ready, goes out within the hour or two. So that's what we do. So if someone emails me needing something for Tuesday and they order Monday, they'll get it Tuesday. So customer service is where we do well, but we're blessed that we just had the time to build to that point. Where now, if you're starting from scratch, like I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to say to
Don't
you.
bother.
Maybe sit it out and just like get as much money as you can up and learn a bit, you know, maybe you even get experience in selling maybe on someone else's time. But
Yeah.
it's not, the game has changed now. It's not what it was. Like there's even people in retail are pulling their clothes in their stores, you know.
It is. It's a very different, I think, industry and even landscape now than it even was a year ago, as you said, but definitely 5 or 6 years ago when you started. So in that respect, if you were daft enough to start a product-based business, I suppose today, or even try and grow one that you started during the pandemic, what are the tips you'd give? Like you've talked a lot there about how loyal your customers are, how incredible your repeat rate is. What advice would you give to kind of, I suppose, startup product makers out there, or even those trying to now start to grow their business?
I'd say first, if you have an ego, get rid of it. You know, I'd say because you're, if you think you're great and whatnot, you're just gonna be left disappointed, you know. And like maybe lay off the memes and hustling and all, like just I don't like the best way to say it, try and just think of it as you're gonna like be very static about it, where you're not gonna be too emotional or too sad, and don't be trying to chase balance, because when you start something, it needs to be like this. It can't be like that. You know, I'm seeing
So
people get,
go at it like a rocket, go at it
yeah,
every day
yeah.
and hard.
And even if it's like you can't afford something, maybe try and learn how to. I had to learn, I couldn't afford a website, so I had to learn how to build one. The website you look at Kotanical at the moment, I built, even though I can afford a website now, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think you have to be very humble and like just maybe network a little bit if you can, or just don't get disheartened, but be as may, be prepared to be broke for about 2 3 years. And like that thing
And
people talk about called a holiday, that mightn't happen, you know. Like I haven't been on a holiday yet because of the pandemic and then things, but I'm starting to take time off for myself a little. Like I haven't had a sick day from Kotanical, you know, like
it's
so.
amazing. But again, I think this is the reality out there that you have grafted, whether that's physically boxing stock or whether that is learning. And that's the really interesting thing I think about your story. You seem to have learned every little aspect of your business because you've had to do it yourself. You know, as you said, in the early days, you had no money, you couldn't pay people to do stuff for you. If you didn't learn how to do it, nobody did it.
That's it, and it's trusting the right people to do the right job. Can be, you know, a lot of people talk. I'm sure you know yourself that, but they'll still sing like a canary for your money, you know. So I'm just, I think, be like, go for it, but in the meantime, make sure you're developing your product where it's gonna look good. At the moment, there's a big problem in Ireland where everyone has the same looking bottle, I
Yeah.
find. And they all have, like, they're all shopping in the same place. Like people are is going as far as the IKEA, you know, to get, and I'm nothing wrong with that, but I think, well, things are changing and the markets haven't adapted how they're going to deal with these updates with Apple or anything. Like, really get your product as the best you can, you know. Don't be chasing, like, because everyone has the same bottle and things, and they have the same ingredients in some cases and the same material. Like, so spend a little bit more time on the finer details, because people aren't stupid, you know. Like when you buy something, you know if it's a good cup of tea, and you know if it's a good coffee, and you know if it's a good kettle, you know if it's going to boil it in 2 minutes. Like, and I think a lot, that's why I refer back to the ego thing. Just leave the ego and be of service to who you think your customer will be, you
And
know.
I think that's key. And I definitely, as a customer, and let's be honest, I am, that's the key. You genuinely seem to have listened to your customer from day one, which is why you have this phenomenal repeat rate, which is why your customers tell other customers or future customers, come and buy from Karl because the product's incredible. Your delivery rate is really strong. Everything is there because you've worked so damn hard by the sounds of it over the last few years to make this look seamless, because on the surface right now you look like you have a phenomenal business, an amazing website, like it looks like the dream, it looks like the dream product business. But from what you're saying is, you know, it's hard work.
Yeah, like it's more of a dream turning into a nightmare at times.
We're
Like,
going to have to come back again next year. I'd love to almost hear the update a year on. Has Karl taken a holiday? That's going to be the
I'm going
second
to.
episode.
I'm going glamping. I'm going glamping. I'm doing something soon. I'm just like, I hate to
Good.
break the cycle, but yeah, definitely. Like, just be willing to duke it out, you know, and maybe be careful of retailers. A lot of people are getting stiffed again. I'm hearing a lot of invoices are being left unpaid. So don't be that person. Oh, someone took €1,000 worth of product, and now you're now celebrating with your family. Then 30 days pass, you don't get paid. 40 days pass, don't get paid. 50 days, you know, like that's it. Don't celebrate too often and don't get upset too often, you know, I'd say. Like
Keep
just be,
that happy
yeah,
medium
yeah.
and
Celebrate
get
when you get
paid
the
by the
money.
sounds of
Get
it as
paid.
well.
Get paid.
Fundamentally, yeah.
Get paid and celebrate, but don't celebrate until you're paid. Like,
Wise words.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of people because it'd be off the wall then, you know? And it's like,
Again, cash flow, and it makes sense. You've no business if no one's paying you. You wouldn't allow a customer buy from your website and not get paid. So it makes perfect sense to keep the level head is really
yeah,
what I'm hearing from you this afternoon is keep whatever you're doing, whether it's the branding or the product or the customer,
yeah.
keep a level head and keep an eye on your business because it's yours.
That's it. Like years ago, I read a book and I had about Jeff Bezos, and I know people hate him now and whatever. He's done amazing things, and but he had about a regret minimization framework, and he had if you have something on the table, you need to ask yourself if you take it off the table, will you be happy in 5 or 10 years' time? And that always stuck with me, even when Kotanical was real difficult. And then I seen an example of it. There was a business that was sold for a few million, and I seen it on Facebook, an article, and some, you know, when you read the comments, you've nothing else to do, you know, everyone does it. But I seen someone had tagged their friend in it, and I was like, look, if someone did what the company you bailed on, or something along those lines, you know, and he was like, your man replied, oh, but you know, oh, I have a job and a family and all now, but it looked like he was really annoyed that someone else had achieved what he couldn't. And to me, that would be like entrepreneur hell, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
goodness.
you sitting there and on the TV, local guy discovers gold, and it's like you should have been digging more. You know, like you'd be like, oh, it'd be a dark moment, but I never forget that comment because you could tell by looking at the common trend that the fella who was tagged in it, who had the carbon copy business, he quit too soon, and someone else realized it. You know.
Amazing. Wise words. I love that. To keep going with that strong head and that humble heart to push on, because by the sounds of it for you, it's working. So before we finish up, final question. What's next for you and Kotanical? What's coming up over the next 6 months?
I'd say we're probably going more into Europe and the UK, and maybe
Exciting.
new products. I can see one or two products we're doing, and yeah, we're just gonna like we're not gonna say anything mad because like we don't know what's tomorrow, but like we're working with some great people now in our wholesale space. With some really interesting retailers that have surprised me. So I'm kind of optimistic more now than ever before. Because like it was like the pandemic was like an appetite for destruction, and now we're kind of like in the next chapter, and it's like it's kind of like to scale the brand, but not scale it where it's not sustainable, you know. So we're working, we have a great PR company, and we're working on a few different like communication with new people, bringing in new blood, bringing in. So it's a lot of pieces on the chessboard, and we're going to start moving
Wow.
them, you know. So we're not going to say too much, but
But that's so exciting. So really starting to push the international, as you said, but with a really strong team behind you by the sounds of it.
yeah, so we'll spend the next few months trialing out different avenues and seeing what's working, what isn't, because we're only getting over the new Apple update, which anyone who's a maker now needs to be aware of that, because they'll put money into a Facebook marketing or something, and they'll see they've spent loads and made nothing, and they won't know what to do. So you need to know that now. That's the most important. So hopefully in the meantime, while we're doing that, the market settles and reacts in the tech world to privacy issues with Facebook and Instagram and Apple phones, because people don't understand the phone. I have an Apple phone. I have the very thing that's destroyed businesses like, um, and it's the new one as well. I really like it, but they keep your data. They have all your data too. So if you're using technology, Apple phone, they're still going to have your data. So people need to get over that now, I think, because it's like if you go down the street, no one's making you sign a consent form if you're seeing it advertising in the window, So
Yeah.
I think people have gotten too much of a hard on for all this when like people need to support jobs and need to get themselves out there,
Absolutely. And buy Irish, I think, is the great big message as well. Support our own, just like you, who's worked so hard to build the business. And then I think support you as you go international. Like we've a terrible habit of knocking people as they get bigger, but it's such a good news story now as you start to kind of spread the word of the brand and sell to more and more people.
That's it. We know what we're good at, we know what we're not good at, and we'll just build from there. But like a lot of people, it's a begrudgers thing in Ireland. If you're doing
Yeah.
well, they think people up to no good, they've solved their solve. But if that's selling yourselves, it feels good to, that's what I be like.
Oh, I'm so excited for you, Carl. I really am. And for the brand, because I think Kotanical's now going to go from strength to strength. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast, and I'm sure I'm going to have Carl back again to hear how his new adventures got on and if he's had that holiday, please like, share, and subscribe to the Retail Tea Break podcast. Connect with myself and Carl, obviously, on Kotanical's social media pages or over on LinkedIn, or leave us a comment today under today's episode, telling us maybe your favorite scent, what you like to buy from Kotanical. And then in the meantime, keep an eye on the Retail Advisor social media pages for news of the next episode of the Retail Tea Break. Carl, for today, thank you so much.
Thanks.